Pre-order my novel, American Evil, today. Link in the description. What is the difference between a civilian and a citizen? The civilian gets excited over every new PlayStation product that gets released. The mouth opens wide in the stereotypical soy boy grimace, right? Every single time they do it, so they can take Sony's tiny cock as far as it'll possibly go down their throat. A couple of inches, right? This is the civilian. Okay, the person who gets excited over Helldivers 2 and convinces himself that it is one of the best games of the year, right? That is a civilian. Now, the citizen is playing superior games on Nintendo hardware. He is reading fine literature. He is studying Starship Troopers, the novel. He is enjoying his life. Like he isn't hinging his entire existence on the success of Arrowhead Studios and Helldivers 2 because he knew going into this that Helldivers 2 was a fad and would die very quickly, right? If only a citizen had come out and made several YouTube videos condemning PlayStation, condemning Helldivers 2, condemning the community who was hyping up this trash. If only some independent author on this platform thought to take the time to make a YouTube video addressing the obvious shill campaign behind Helldivers 2. If only somebody had done that. But now we're far enough along in the Helldivers hype cycle where people are beginning to acknowledge the very real problems with the game. And all of it is expedited by Sony's general incompetence. They really believe, they genuinely believe that they can get people to tie in their PSN accounts to their Steam accounts, right? They really think that having two different accounts tied to this game is something that people will go for. And by the looks of it, that isn't the case, right? There are countries in the world where Helldivers 2 is simply not available. Steam has delisted Helldivers 2 in those areas. People are unsubbing from PSN. Like, PlayStation played their hand. They really thought that people would support Helldivers 2 no matter what because they had nothing else to play this year. But the PC Master Race just said, nah. Well, we'll just go back to watching porn, right? That is the situation as it stands now. One of the most overhyped games of the year, one of the most overhyped games I've seen, period, honestly. This really is a repeat of the Baldur's Gate 3 thing in a lot of ways, where people really tried firing themselves up, oh, it's gonna win Game of the Year, guys. It's the best game released this year. Never mind, it's a February release. Never mind that it's not on Switch where the real competition is. Never mind it's competing directly with Splatoon. The game franchise that dethroned Overwatch. Forget Overwatch in general, which had a 5-year hype cycle of people pretending it was the greatest thing ever before having its slow gradual decline hit such a steep cliff that it never really recovered from it. Never mind that Sony just has had a really poor track record these past couple of years. Everyone ignored all of the very real red flags in regard to Helldivers 2 and really tried to make it out to be something it wasn't, right? Idiots like Grums came out and tried to say this game was some anti-woke thing, some big blow against the gaming establishment or some shit. It was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And people were screaming at me about Helldivers 2. I wasn't really paying attention to it because I've been busy, but people were coming to my live stream, asking me oh, what about Helldivers 2? And I knew that Helldivers 2 wasn't relevant enough to talk about. It is the Baldur's Gate 3 of 2024, right? It is the new flavor of the month game. It was something that came and went like the wind. And honestly, by the end of the year, I'm not even sure I'm going to remember it even existed. It's one of those things where the industry is desperate to hype up anything and everything that comes their way. on PC and PlayStation, right? Xbox and PlayStation aren't doing so well right now. So now that they have to like lean extra hard in on the PC stuff, so that includes like enabling emulation, pretending that emulating games is completely legal, hyping up mods, even though companies are cracking down on it and beginning to start to charge you. Bethesda is doing this now, trying to do damage control for like absolute train wrecks like The Last of Us Part 2, Starfield, No Man's Sky. Like the past decade has been abysmal for games, and we're still seeing the online gaming community try to pretend that everything is hunky dory. Everyone's pretending that like, oh man, the games are coming, like they're coming, not on Nintendo consoles, but they're coming, and it's just sad at this point, honestly, especially when you like take a peek behind the curtain and see what these people are actually like and realize just how little people like Nitro Rad or Scott the Waz or Mudahar actually play their games, right? Like the reality is people like Video Game Donkey are complete frauds. They have built themselves up as gaming YouTube content creators, but don't necessarily have like the experience or the skill set to really evaluate or judge games the way that like serious gamers can, right? Like it was appalling to me, going into uh 2024, right? Seeing like the Switch lineup, seeing like amazing looking games like Princess Peach Showtime, Unicorn Overlord, Endless Ocean, Luminous, the Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Luigi's Mansion 2. Like it was so amazing going into this year and seeing people like try and say that the Switch was going to have a bad year this year, that this was going to be the last year for the Switch ever, which simply isn't going to happen. Like it's going to stay online even after the next console comes out, guys. I hate to break it to you, but the Switch is not going to magically just disappear once the new Nintendo hardware gets announced, right? It's ridiculous. It's absurd, but we've been seeing this like clockwork over and over again for the past 25 years, right? Ever since the PlayStation was unveiled, people just get excited at the new at the next at the upcoming product, and then they forget about it, and then they move on to the next product. But like the issue with that is like like we've gone from like games like Final Fantasy VII, which are like legit classics and legit really good, and like big innovators in their own way, right? To middling games like God of War, which were praised for like the cinematography, in spite of like limiting the gameplay compared to superior action games like Devil May Cry and Onimusha, right? We went from that to like the linear hallway simulators with The Last of Us, and now we're at the point in the PS5 generation where we're simply not getting games at all. And yet you're seeing people like still try and run damage control, still trying to say that like, oh, Helldivers 2 is going to recover from this. People are going to sign up for PSN just to keep playing this game. I don't think so. Like, I can tell you from experience that like a big reason why I have never tried to play Destiny 2 or Apex Legends or Overwatch 2 on my Nintendo Switch. Like, a big reason why I have never played those games is because they require an account. Why would I pay? Why would I put in my personal information to a company for a game that I haven't decided I like yet, right? Like, why would I do that? Like that's the reality of the situation is that like this thing is becoming too convoluted and too much to keep up with, right? Nobody is able to keep track of all these accounts and what they all do. Like, how exactly does signing into PSN make Helldivers 2 better? That's what I want to know, right? Like, what exactly do I gain by like linking my PSN account to my Helldivers 2 account, to my Steam account, when I have no intention of ever buying a PlayStation ever again, ever, right? And I do think that's like what Sony's trying to do here is that they are trying to like put all their high profile games on Steam in hopes that eventually Steam users will like start flocking back to PlayStation once they start like releasing the sequels to their favorite games, right? I imagine like Helldivers 3 will be a PlayStation exclusive. I imagine like The Last of Us Part 3 will be a PlayStation exclusive. I imagine, the new God of War. I believe Ragnarok's not out on PC yet. Spider-Man 3. I believe Spider-Man 2 is not out yet, right? Like, I imagine that's like the mindset Sony has is that like, okay, we're going to promote our games through the Steam marketplace to get people on board with PlayStation going forward, right? That's kind of my mindset on this, right? But I think this isn't going to work. Like I do think that like the Steam audience has a really deep contempt for consoles, especially PlayStation consoles, right? Like more than any other uh, group of gamers, I've seen a lot of criticism towards how Sony conducts themselves and how they develop their games and how they handle these kind of releases and how they handle these kind of situations. It's been remarkable seeing how the online gaming community has turned against Sony in the past couple of weeks. You know, first the Stellar Blade thing and then the Helldivers 2 thing, right? It does feel as if like consumers are starting to associate Sony with like being like the tyrannical overlords of gaming. Now, they always were that, right? Like this is nothing new, but like back in the day, people used to like pretend they were the good guys. Like, oh, we want to be conquered. We want Sony to put and Nintendo and Sega out of business because oh, they're just kiddie stuff. Like that was the mindset people had back then. And there are still people who feel that way, but like they are a declining minority, right? Like every year it feels like Nintendo like solidifies their position more and more as like the dominant gaming hardware, and Sony just lags further and further behind. Like I've talked a lot recently about how the PS2 numbers are completely fake, and I have to wonder if that also extends to like the PS5 sales numbers because what I'm seeing now, like this kind of backlash to PlayStation as a brand, like I don't think PlayStation is doing that well at all. Like I think the PS5 is an absolute failure of a console, right? And yet we're still in this phase where people don't want to admit it, right? We're still in this phase where like Sony is going third party and you have like game journals and YouTubers try to spin that as a good thing for the company, a good thing for gamers, but in reality, like it's just putting everything under the Steam umbrella, right? Again, like it feels like the new platform war is against like the PC gamers, the mobile scene, and Nintendo, right? And I would argue this is a better setup than what we had before because I could not stand the Xbox and PlayStation era. But like yeah, there's no denying that like the mobile and PC gaming market is toxic as well. Right. Like there's no denying that like both of those mediums have a lot of issues that their respective audiences don't like to acknowledge or admit at all. Right? Like PC gamers, they really thought they were going to be safe from Sony by playing their games on PC, but as it turns out, that's not the case at all. Like they are going to be extremely limited going forward on what they can do as Sony like innovates in ways to crack down on mods, crack down on piracy, force you to integrate games with your PSN account. Like it's not just multiplayer games, by the way. I'm told that Ghost of Tsushima is also going to require it. So this is probably going to be the standard for PlayStation releases on Steam going forward. And you guys absolutely deserve this. Like all you had to do was not support PlayStation in any way, shape, or form, and you could not even do that.